Hello, today I'd like to show how to build out a working blackjack game using Python. Let's get started. To begin the blackjack project, we're going to want to set up the user interface. We'll be using Tkinter, and here is the initial pop-up that shows. Next is to create the card class. Each card will consist of a value and a suit. For example, anything 2 through 10, or Jack, Queen, King, or Ace, and then the suit will be diamonds, hearts, spades, and clubs. Next is creating the class 6 deck. 6 comes from a lot of times in blackjack, there are multiple decks in the chute, so we're going to choose 6. First is the initialization function. Here we're going to set self.cards equal to an empty array, and then we're going to call self.build. And then within self.build, we're going to use 3 for loops, one for the 6 decks, one for the 4 different suits, and one for the values ace through king, represented by 1 through 14. Then we're going to append a card into self.cards for each one of these value combinations. Next, I created 3 functions, one to shuffle a card using 2 for loops. This will be needed to start the game. One to draw a card. This will be needed for both the player and the dealer to draw cards from the deck. And a deck reset. This will be needed once the deck runs out of cards. Next, we'll create the player class. We'll start with the initialization function, which will set self.hand equal to an empty array because there's no cards in it yet, and self.chips equal to 0 because they haven't bought in yet. And then we'll have a draw function where a card will be equal to deck.draw, what we just made in the 6 deck class, and then self.hand.append the card that we just drew. Next, we'll build out the dealer class. To start, it's exactly the same as the player class, however, there is no self.chip count. Going back to the main method, let's now start by giving our UI an icon photo and a title. So to start, go image.open cards slash blackjack.png. Cards is the folder that will hold all of our PNG files, and then icon photo is equal to image.tk.photo image. You need a photo image to use for Tkinter icon photos, and then let's give our UI the title of blackjack, and then set the icon photo. And when after all this is done, this is what it would look like. Next, to start building out the UI, let's start with frames. So we're going to need to start with a frame list is equal to an empty array, and then a for I in range 0 to 2000. That way we have plenty of frames to work with. Let's go label frame, associate with the root, with a width of 2000, a height of 2000, and a background of dark gray. And then let's go frame list 0.pack. And after we do that, we can now see the UI is a dark gray and much bigger interface. Next, we'll create a button within the first frame, which will start the blackjack game, and we'll place that within the UI, and it will call command start, which we will build out here in a second. So upon starting the game, the user will need to enter their buy-in amounts and their bet amounts. So we have the entries and the labels down here and place them within the UI. Then, when we start the game, the player will add chips based off the buy-in entry, and then the global's bet size will be equal to the bet entry. To make this global bet size right above the start function, just set the global bet size equal to 0. To finish up the start function, we're going to call deal, and within deal, we're going to increment the global's frame count, which was initialized and created up here, and then we're going to use that frame and pack that into the UI. So just a quick change for the buy-in entry and the bet entry, make sure to remove the dot place from the initialization line and add it to a new line to avoid an error. Before packing a new frame, we first have to clear the old frame. So calling clear frame here will run this function and for loop, which will clear all the widgets within the old frame. So to show the player and dealer's cards, we want to first create this image list array. Now to add to this, we want to create the function draw adds where we will call get card string. And within get card string, we'll pass in a suit and a value, which will return the string of the location of the picture for the associated card that we just drew. And then we're going to call add image, and add image will do the same thing that we did for the icon photo. It will make the string into a Tkinter photo image, which we will append to the image list. So to call draw adds, we need the suit and the value for the card that the player just drew. So we need to add get suit and get value to the player class. Both of these functions will return the suit and the value for the card that was most recently drawn by the player. To display the card, we need to create a label, put it within the frame, and then locate it with an image list using image count, and then place it at the global's player card tracker. So we need to create a few globals for this. So up here, we're going to create the global image count, dealer card tracker, and player card tracker. And with all of those, you can now see that the UI displays the card. You want to do exactly what you just did for the player, for the dealer. We need to add the get value and get suit methods for the dealer as well. And then we also need to increment dealer card tracker and change the Y placement to 100. Copy and paste what you did for the player, copy and paste what you did for the dealer. And after all this, then you will see that the 4 cards show up. We want to create a label to display the player score within the UI. So we need to call p.score, which is a new function that we will create in the player class. Here we can simply check if there's an ace or not. If there is not an ace, then we sum the cards up. If there is an ace, then we will add the ace based off the sum of the cards. So if it's equal to 1, which is an ace, then if the sum is less than 11, go ahead and add 11. Else, you just want to add 1. And then that would be the end of calculating the player score. To add hit and stand buttons, we'll create a hit button list and a stand button list. And within the for loop, we're going to add hit button list.append a button that will call the command hit and a button that will call the command dealer's turn. So we'll build out those functions in a second, but we want to place those within the UI, and this is what it will look like. We then want to add a few labels. The first one showing the player's chip count. To call this, add a function chip count in the player class, which returns self.chips. Then we're going to show an image IDPC, which is an image of a chip. And to build that, we just need to go down here, image.opencard/chip.png, resize it just like we did to Tkinter photo image, and then beside it, show the global's bet size. After all of this, you can see that we now have a chip count and the bet size. After the hand is dealt, we have to check if the player has blackjack. To start this, create the function player blackjack check, globals bjbool is equal to true, and we'll set that global up here. So if the player has a score of 21, that means they have blackjack, so we'll destroy the options to hit and stand, and then create a label to display the text blackjack to show the user that they have it. And then we'll place the play again button and the color up button, which were created just like the hit and stand buttons with arrays, and then they're down here. The commands will be deal and endgame. The endgame function I added and we will add to later. And then after that, we're going to add chips times 2.5 the bet size because a blackjack pays more, and then add a label with the text showing how much they won. To check if the dealer had blackjack, we're going to go if dscore is equal to 21. So within the dealer class, we need to add the score function just like we did in the player class. And then from there, we're going to create a label and we're going to go image list at down card index. So this is the original dealer's first card that was face down. So we're going to add this line, global's down card index equals global's image count. And we're going to add down card index up here as well. Just like we did in the player blackjack check, we're going to destroy the hit and stand buttons, add the play again and cover up buttons, and then we're going to give the user a message saying that the dealer had blackjack and how many chips they lost, which is their bet size. So now we're going to make a quick change to the player blackjack check. If the D score is equal to 21, then the bets just push and the player only gets their bet back. Else, then they win the blackjack just like usual. Next, we're going to start creating the hit function. So the player needs to draw a card from the deck. Then we need to call getString to add the image to the image list. And then we're going to display that image at the player card tracker. We're going to increment the image count in the player card tracker and display the score for the user. So when we press hit, you can now see that the score went up by 1 when we got an ace. We want to then check if the player's score is greater than 21. If it is, then we want to show what the dealer's face down card was, destroy the hit and stand buttons, add the play again and color up buttons, and indicate to the player that they busted using a couple labels. And for a small improvement, let's create the hit and stand destroy function, which will destroy both the hit and stand button, and put that in place for any time that we were to destroy the hit and stand buttons. Now we'll build out the function dealer's turn. This is what happens when the player chooses to stand. First, we'll have a label, which is the image of the face down card. And while the dealer's score is less than 17, they will draw from the deck. We'll get the string, add the image to the image list, which we will display using the dealer card tracker location, and then increment the image count and dealer card tracker. Next, we'll want to create a label that displays the dealer's score. And if the dealer score is greater than 21, which means they busted, then we'll destroy the hit and stand buttons, add the play again and color up buttons, add the player's chips 2 times the bet size, just like you would in a casino. And then you'll add 2 labels, which will display to the user how many chips they won and that the dealer busted. So this is what the UI will look like when the dealer busts. And if they don't bust, however, we want to call the function check win, which we will start building out here in a second. In the check win function, we're going to start with destroying the hit and stand buttons and adding the play again and color up buttons because it will be the end of the hand. If the player score is greater than the dealer score, then that means the player won, so they get 2 times their bet back, and we will make 2 labels to indicate to the player that they won and how much they won. We'll do the same thing if the player score is equal to the dealer score, however, the player will only get their bet back. And then lastly, if the dealer score is higher, then the dealer wins and they will not get any of their bet back. So right now we have the beginnings of what could be a blackjack game. So we hit stand, we hit play again, but the cards move over, so we'll need to make a fix for that. To fix this, right after clearing the frame, let's go player.reset, which will be a new function within the player class where we set the hand equal to the empty array. We'll do the same thing for the dealer. And then after calling that, we're going to set the player card tracker and dealer card tracker equal to 0. So after making these changes, you can see that we have a much more seamless blackjack game. However, we're still missing a few features. For the player to see how they did at the end of the game, we're going to add this function endgame. This will calculate the final chips that they held, which is the chip count minus what they started with. And if the chip count is greater than 0, then they won chips, and it has a label for that. And if it is less than 0, then they lost chips, and there's a label for that. And then we clear the frame. So the result of this looks like this. One small change in the deal function, we want to change the image for the first card that the dealer draws to IMBC. And IMBC will be defined here at the bottom, just like we did for IDPC. We will make an image open and reference blue.png and make that a photo image for Tkinter. And that will result in a face down card for the dealer. We now want to add the ability to double the bet for the player. So to start this, we're going to make a double button list, just like we did with everything else, where we append a button down here that refers to the double function. Now the double function will start with setting global's double bool equal to true. Now that will be set up here, where global's double bool will be initialized to false. Going back down to the double function, we then want to double the bet size and then have the player lose their bet size again because they just added to it. We then want to add a label to display the current chip count for the player because it went down. The player will then draw from the deck. We'll get an image, we'll display the image for that card, and then we'll increment image count in player tracker. Then we'll create a label to display the player's score, and then we'll check if the player score is over 21. If it is, we'll display the dealer's face down card. We'll call hit and stand destroy. Then we'll place the play again and color up buttons, and then we'll indicate to the user that they busted using a couple labels. Within the deal function, we want to add the double button and place it within the UI. And then within the double function itself, we want to destroy the double button because you cannot double twice. At the beginning of the deal function, we're going to want to add this if statement. If the double bool is true, then we'll set the bet size equal to half the current bet size. This is because we don't want that double bet to continue for the next hand. We will also want to add the double button dot destroy line to the hit function, the dealer's turn function, the dealer blackjack, and the player blackjack function. So next we're going to work on what I believe is the most difficult part of the game, which is the split. So to begin, we're going to add the split button list array, and then we're going to append to that array a button that calls the split function. So to start the split function, we're going to want to have the player lose the chips, their bet size, because you're essentially doubling. And then we're going to want to set the player card tracker back to 0, and we're going to want to get a card with the player suit and player value. And then we are going to display that card at the player card tracker location. We will then increment image count and then set split bool equal to true, which is a new global variable that we will create up here, just like we have all the other globals. And going back down to split, we call p.split to holding. So that is a new function in the player class. So when you're playing on a split hand, one card gets played while one card waits till the other card is finished with the hand. So we need to send one to a holding array, which we created up here in the initialization function. And we're just going to set or call self.split to holding append and then self.hand.pop. So after calling that split to holding, we want to set the global's player card tracker equal to 0, draw another card from the deck, get the string, which adds the image to the image list, where we will display at the player card tracker, and then increment the image count in the player card tracker. To finish this off, we want to create 2 labels, one to display the player's score, and the other to display that is the first split hand. And then we want to check if the player got blackjack from that split hand. To add splitting as an option, we're going to go into the deal function and call if p.splitCheck, which is a function new to the player class, where we will check to see if both cards in the hand have the same value, or if they're both greater than 10. So like King Jack, you can technically split as well. It returns true if it is the same, and then going back here, then if that is true, then the split button is available. So here's an example of what a split hand would look like. And then when you press split, you can see that we are now showing this first split hand. And let's say we finish that up. So we need to work out a few kinks. There's a couple spots where we have to destroy the split button. One is in the split function. If the p.splitCheck is equal to false, then you go ahead and destroy it. In the double function and within the dealer blackjack check. We will also want to destroy the split button if the dealer busts on the dealer's turn. So let's say that you split a hand and you didn't get to see the second part of the hand. So to fix this, within dealer's turn, we want to set an if statement if the length of p dot split holding is greater than 0, so there's still a card ready from the split hand, then split scores dot append p dot score. So split scores will be an empty array down here that we will add to it. And then after that, we're going to call split deal. So to start split deal, we want to clear the frame, we want to increment the frame count, and then we want to pack the new frame in, and then we want to call p.reset and then set the player card and dealer card tracker equal to 0. We will then call p.draw holding, which will draw from the cards that were previously split. So this is a new function in the player class where we go self.hand.append self.splitholding.pop. So it gets that card, and then we display that card in the UI, and we increment the image count and the player card tracker. One quick change within the dealer's turn function, we want to, after this if statement, make this an else statement. That way it doesn't run all this after it will call split deal. A couple more things that need to be added is a dealer split to holding in the split function as well. So within the dealer class, we will add split to holding. We will also add a holding draw and a split holding array. So back in split deal, we're going to want to do the similar thing that we did for the player for the dealer. However, we're going to want to again display that blue face down image, but we want the dealer to draw from the holding array. Within the split function, we're going to want to add d.split to holding one more time, and then we're going to want to copy and paste what we did for the player and the dealer. However, the player will be drawing from the deck instead of the draw holding. And then we're going to want to display the player's score, show the hit, stand, and double buttons, show the split button if true, and then create a label to display the player's chip count and to indicate that it's a split hand. And then we're going to want to run player blackjack check and dealer blackjack check. So here's what it looks like now when we can split. We can play the first hand and the second hand, but we don't know which hands we want. To start the split results function, we're going to destroy the hit and stand button and the double and split button, and we're going to add the play again and color button to the UI, and then we're going to create some labels to indicate that it's a split hand result and the bet size that they made. So to keep track of our split winnings, we're going to need to add a money count, loss count, win count, and tie count. Then we're going to loop through each score in split scores. If it's greater than 21, we busted, so we lost the bet. We increase loss count. If the dealer is over 21, they busted, so we increase win count, and we add chips to the player. Same thing if we are greater than the dealer score. If we tie the dealer score, then we add to tie count. Else we lost, and so we will increase the loss count. Next, we're going to want to create the array split doubles, and we're going to want to loop through each of these scores within split doubles. I know we haven't appended to that yet, and we'll build that out in a second. So to implement split doubles, we're going to want to add a C dealer turn button and a next split button list. So the next split will just simply go to split deal, and then the C dealer's turn will go to dealer's turn function. So within the double function, we're going to want to test for if p.split holding is greater than 0. So that means we're in the first hand of a split hand. And so then we need to go on to the next split hand, which is why we put the button there. Else if we are on the last one, then we still want to append the split doubles, but we want to see the dealer's turn. And we're going to do the same thing if the player did not bust. We will also want to loop through every time we got blackjack on a split hand. So we need to make a new array, split blackjack, loop through each of those, add the appropriate amount of chips, add to money count, and add to blackjack count. And where we're going to want to check for this is within the player's blackjack check. After we check if the dealer's score is equal to 21, we then check if the p dot holding is greater than 0, and we do the same thing that we just did for the double function. We will then want to display the results of the game to the user. So if they have each possible type of win, we're going to display each one and just go from there. And we'll just display all the required information. If the money count is greater than 0, then we'll tell the user that they won a certain amount of money in a split hand, else we'll tell them how much they lost. At the beginning of the deal function, we're going to want to reset all these split values. That way for the next split hand, nothing is messed up. So we're going to make split hold reset, which will clear all the values from the player split holding array and for the dealer split holding array. And then we will set global split bool equal to false. Next, within the split function, we need to add the same logic for the split hands. So first, if the player busted and they have another card left in their split hand, then we will add the next split button to the UI. If there is not another card, then we will simply add the C dealer's turn to the UI. Additionally, within the dealer function, in the else, after we check if the dealer had busted, we want to append the player score to split scores. And one last change to the player blackjack check. Within the if p dot split holding is greater than 0, I want to destroy the color up button. And then one last one in the dealer's turn function, you want to split scores dot append the player score if the split bool is equal to true after the dealer busts. Finally, we don't want the deck to run out of cards. So we're going to add a length function to the 6 deck, return self.cards. And if the deck length is less than 20, we will call deck.deck reset. Within the split function, we need to make the d.split to holding in a if statement because if you split twice, it will be popping from an empty array. Additionally, within the holding draw method, we want to say if not self.split holding. That way, if there's no more cards left in the dealer holding hand, then we do not pop from it. All right, let's test the game out. We're going to start with $100 with a bet size of 10. And the dealer starts with the blackjack. All right, here we go. Perfect split. So we had 20 or 18 and then 19. And then the dealer got 21, so we lost 2. 8 versus 4, you hit that. Stand. All right, perfect. We won. 6 versus 5, stand. Oh, dealer won. And 14 versus 3 was stand and dealer won. So there you go. You can test this out yourself. Thanks for watching.